Hey everyone, it's Gabrielle, and today we're going to go through everything I learned from doing 3 oral exams for the Leaving Cert. So my first tip for doing the oral exams is actually to practice speaking as much as you can. I know that it is probably really obvious that if you want to get better at your oral exams, you should probably go practice speaking, but really don't underestimate how effective this can be. However, this can be quite difficult if you don't have a native speaker around you, like we don't all have like an uncle that lives in the 𝘬𝘁𝘂𝗱𝗆 or an aunt in France. So what you do if you don't really have anybody native to practice speaking with. I got you, because this was exactly my situation when I did my Leaving Cert. So for this, I think that meeting up with your friends on a Saturday or a Sunday to just go through oral exam stuff will be an absolute game changer. This is super effective for getting used to speaking the language that you're studying, but also it benefits everybody. This by itself is a really effective study method. However, what is even more effective is actually meeting up with friends from different schools that are studying the same languages as you. Because when your friends are studying at a different school, they have a different language teacher to you, so they have a ton of more different vocabulary that you can kind of like steal and leech off of them. And particularly if your friend goes to grinds, they might have a few sort of sentences that they can teach you or that you can practice together. Like, it just benefits everybody in the situation. I would really recommend it. But only if your friends don't distract you though, because I did have a few friends that I met up with and we did not get a lot of study done. So just be sure that the time that you're spending is dedicated to going over oral exam stuff and not just other things. However, if you can't meet up with your friends to study for the orals together, then you can still practice your speaking skills. So what you can choose to do is actually record yourself speaking out your notes or going through your 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 or your 𝘵𝘪𝘥𝘂𝗱𝗏 or anything else that you have to study for. Record yourself speaking and then listen back to the audio and compare what you say to your notes. And if you're worried about pronouncing things wrong, then one thing that you can do is actually read out your notes to Google Translate or to 𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏. So both of these sites actually have a speech-to-text feature whereby you can just like talk out what you want to say in the language that you're studying, and then they transcribe everything into text. So if what you're saying turns out to be complete gibberish, then you're probably not pronouncing the things very well and you should look over your pronunciations with your teacher. But if everything is coming out clear and exactly as you had written it in your notes, then you are on the right track with your pronunciation. If you would like some more specific tips on studying French or German, please be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe. That will help me to know that we should make more content like this. So the second thing I think every student should know is that it is really important for you to familiarize yourself with the format of your oral exam. And also you should be really familiar with the questions that can be asked. This also sounds like a bit more of an obvious tip, but do not underestimate how comforting it is to know exactly what to expect from the oral exam. And for me personally, this was a huge comfort when I did my Irish oral exam because it went absolutely horrific. I haven't heard of anybody ever having a worse Irish oral than I did, and I will talk about it later on in the video, but actually going into that Irish oral exam and knowing the layout of what's going to happen, what exactly like the examiner is going to go through, that I'll need to do like a poem, I'll need to do like a general chit chat, I need to do the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗏, like knowing that and how much marks each part is worth was so comforting. Because as well, when you're in the oral exam and if you feel like you messed up a certain part, knowing in the back of your mind that that part isn't worth like that much will be really comforting in the moment. So be sure to know all of that before you go into your exam. And one other thing that you should really know before going into your oral exam is all of the question words associated with the language that you're studying. So where, when, how, what, etc. You really don't want to be going into the oral exam answering questions you weren't asked. And be sure to prepare some sentences in advance to ask questions like, oh, could you repeat that? Or could you rephrase that? And so on. Even if you don't end up using those sentences in your oral exam, they're still really useful to have just in case, which will provide you with a little bit more comfort because you know this exam is super stressful. For me personally, I found like the orals to be the most stressful exams that I did for my Leaving Cert, but anyway, be prepared. And before I move on, I'd like to just add that I am super curious to hear what languages you're studying for the Leaving Cert. And do you like the fact that you're going to have an oral exam, or would you prefer it if everything was just written out? I'd be super curious to hear about all of this, so please be sure to comment down below. And if you have any of your own sort of tips for studying for the orals, then do comment those as well. I think a lot of people would find those very useful. So moving on. So moving forward, my next tip is that you should really prepare for common topics that will come up in your oral exam. So what I mean by prepare some common topics is that no, there's only like a limited amount of things that your examiner can ask you about. Basically where you live, your school, your hobbies, about yourself, and etc. I think the easiest way to go about the oral exams is to have like 1 or 2 hobbies prepared in detail, like know off the top of your head how to talk about this certain hobby. For me in all of my oral exams, I actually just like talked about how much I love language learning and that I am doing 3 like subjects for like the orals. Like I could say that in all German, Irish, and Japanese, which was so useful because I found it a lot easier to remember the same vocab, the same sort of things to say, in just like different languages. So do whatever works for you. And remember that your oral examiner will be really happy for you to kind of guide the conversation in your favor. So if they ask you a question that is completely unrelated to, for example, dogs, but you have prepared a lot of sentences about like your dog and how much you love your dog and how you spend all of your time with your dog, then do direct the conversation to your dog. If they ask you, what did you do during the weekend? You can say like, oh, I went for a walk with my dog. And by the way, I really love my dog. But do it in like obviously not English, in the language that you're studying. So unless you're really stuck for something to say, be sure to stay clear of topics that you're not too familiar with and just stick to the ones that you do know quite well. And I'd like to add here that there is no shame in using very like simple language in your oral exam, because the most important thing is that what you say is clear and correct. Although you might gain some extra marks for using some more complicated grammar structures or for using really fancy vocabulary, but just be mindful that you're more likely to lose marks if this fancy vocabulary and this grammar is wrong. The safest thing that you can do is use language that is simply correct. So my last piece of advice is to actually remember that the examiner is 100% on your side. They want to give you as many marks as possible, but they can't give you the marks if you don't even attempt to answer the questions. And also, you need to remember that this examiner is not some scary figure that is out to get you. It's more than likely that the examiner that you'll get for your orals is just some random like language teacher from the other side of the country. Like there truly is nothing to be scared of, and most of them are really nice as well. I personally found the oral exams to be the most terrifying exams that I did for my Leaving Cert, just because I feel as though if I messed up on a written exam, then it's only between me and the piece of paper, you know? But when there's somebody else involved, it just adds another layer of anxiety and stress. And I was really worried for my oral exams. I was terrified, actually. I was very stressed out, because obviously you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of a different person, but truly the examiner will not care that much. They have like 100 students to examine, so they're not going to particularly judge you or be really harsh with you if you misgender a fridge in French or something like that. If anything, you can add your worry as a part of your oral exam if you learn off in the language how to say, oh, I am a little bit nervous. It is in the examiner's best interest to be nice to you, to give as many marks as possible. So it's okay if you're feeling a little bit nervous. I think they will understand. And this is one thing I really wish I would have known before doing my oral exams, because I was terrified of the examiner. And that can really be highlighted by my experience of doing the Irish oral exams, which is like a story I've never told since it actually happened, because it just went so horribly wrong. So here's what happened and what I learned from it. Firstly, for a bit of context, I did 8 subjects for my Leaving Cert, all at higher level except for Irish. I took Irish at ordinary level because I was already doing 2 other languages, German and Japanese, and I felt as though the higher level paper was just like so difficult that I was happy to just do ordinary level. And to be honest, I did not study as much as I should have because I knew I probably wasn't going to use Irish for my points. So this was okay in 5th year. I kind of got away with not doing too much for Irish, but this really like bit me in the back when it came to the orals in 6th year because I realized that I knew nothing. I didn't know how to speak Irish, and now all of a sudden in a couple of weeks I was meant to sit down with another person and like talk to them in Irish and have the 𝗏𝗏 because when I did my 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 we needed to do 20 of them for the year. And it was like, I was just like already so nervous, but I didn't even have like that much time to study for the Irish exam because like I had 2 other orals to do in Japanese and in German. So I was like super stressed out, thinking that I was going to be so judged by this oral examiner. Like, how have I lived in Ireland all of my life up to that point and just not be able to properly like speak Irish? So but it gets worse. It gets a lot worse because what happened was that, oh my gosh, can you hear that? They're like cleaning the street right now. Okay, where was I? So what went wrong in my Irish oral? What was so horrific? And honestly, I'm a little embarrassed to talk about it now, even though this shouldn't be embarrassing. This is what happened. So basically, the way the oral exams worked in my school is that there was a big list of all of the names of the students who were doing their Irish oral exams. And when you were finished with your exam, you needed to tick off your name and then go 2 rows down and call up the person who's like 2 rows down below you. So basically, when you're done your oral exam, you go call up somebody else, except nobody called me up. Nobody called me for my oral exam. And it sounds silly now to talk about it, but it was terrifying at the time because I realized that like I was seeing people leave class, but I was ahead of them in the line. And so what it turns out is that the person just like forgot to like call me when she went home after doing her like oral exam. Because like, to be fair, I don't blame this person in any sense. It is like a very stressful thing to do anyways, but that just like put me in another frenzy of panic. Looking back, I totally overreacted, but when I was already so stressed out for these oral exams in Irish as 𝘬𝘓𝗮, it just made me feel horrible on the inside. I felt like cry. I did cry actually. What happened was basically I went upstairs to where the oral exams were being held and I waited for the next person to like leave because I didn't actually like properly inform a teacher about this or anything. I just like did not know what to do. So when my class ended, I just like went upstairs to the like, you know, like waited for the girl to finish her oral exam. And I like knocked on the door where like the oral examiner was just sitting there, like just doing like a few notes before getting the other person. And I just like went up and I wanted to like, I basically like knocked on the door and I opened it up, and in my head I just wanted to explain that like I swear I am not a delinquent. I was just not called up. I do actually want to take this exam. Please don't have a bad like sort of impression of me, because I was so nervous. I was terrified of these like oral exams as 𝘬𝘓𝗮. I was much happier to do like the Japanese and the German one instead, because I prepared for those ones a lot better than this one. And so rather than saying all of this out to the oral examiner, I just started to like tear up and start to like, you know, like just get so overwhelmed. And this poor lady was just so confused. She was like, "Bet, you're fine," like, because I think I just completely overreacted, thinking that she was going to think I was a bad student for just like basically ditching my oral exam when that was like not the truth. And she was so sweet about it. She was really confused at the start as to like why she had this like random student all red in the eyes and just like so like overwhelmed. She basically told me to just like sit down like in like the little waiting room, and whenever I'm ready to go do the oral, she'd be happy to go like do it if I want to do it last or if I need more time or whatever. She was so understanding that I was like super stressed out and that, you know, I was just like really overwhelmed. It was really the stress that got me, that made me feel so like overwhelmed. But anyway, what happened was I waited for like the next person in line to do their oral exam, and afterwards I went in. So how did the actual exam go? Well, it was something, because I was still so flustered from what had just happened, and at that point I was just a bit embarrassed at how much I panicked and just like stressed out and overreacted in front of this person. But the oral examiner, she was so lovely. First of all, she gave me to read 𝗬𝗟𝗏, which is I think the easiest poem out of them all, so I was like delighted about it. And when we did our little like chat together, she was very kind in the sense that I basically mentioned that I really like languages when I said that, oh, I study German and Japanese as well. And so she just like spent most of the time just talking about that, which is all the stuff that I had prepared, and I had like barely anything else ready for the Irish oral. So I was so happy. But then what happened at the very end, when we needed to take the 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃, I ended up getting the like most awful one. You know, the one, everyone probably knows which one I'm talking about. It's the one where like there's a burst pipe during like winter, and it's just so complicated to like talk through. And that was when like the panic like seeped in. But I remembered that the last like 2 parts of the oral went kind of well because I knew the structure of the exam. And so I wasn't like too panicked about it, but I think the examiner could see that I was like really like gutted about getting this one, about this pipe, and I just like, I didn't even know how to say like most of the stuff as 𝗀𝘂𝗃, but I put an attempt anyway. I did still talk for the full like 2-3 minutes that you're supposed to talk about it, and the questions that the examiner gave me were really easy. And this experience made me realize that like literally the person in front of me doing the exam isn't scary. They're actually like really understanding, and they want what's best for the students that they're examining. So after that horrible 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃, the exam was over, and it was the most underwhelming thing. I was just spent so many weeks stressing about this oral exam that was over like that. And then I'm like, wow, that's it. Like, it was truly underwhelming. And I learned a lot from that experience about not getting too stressed out or not getting too into a panic mode when something goes wrong. And also, I really learned that you should have faith in other people, that they're not gonna like be super judgmental, or they're not gonna like just be mean to you for no reason, you know? So I think that truly you should not be too worried about the person that you'll be talking to for your oral exam. If you get super anxious about talking to new people, truly most of them are really lovely, and they want what's best for you. And don't do what I did and just absolutely panic at the moment when something went wrong, okay? So those are all of the tips that I have for today, and if you'd like to see more language learning content, then please be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. I hope this helps, and best of luck with the orals!